The 2000 presidential election between George W. Bush and Al Gore is considered one of the closest elections in American history. It all came down to the state of Florida. On election night, the returns had Bush ahead by such a small margin that state law required a recount. This triggered a month-long series of legal battles which ended in a highly controversial Bush v. Gore Supreme Court decision. When the recount was stopped, the Florida State Secretary of State certified that Bush had won the state by just 537 votes. That's a margin of 0.009%. That election, the entire election, was decided by 537 votes. But as Marcela Valdez of the Washington Post points out, historically, elections are decided not only by those who cast votes, but also by those who don't. So there's a case to be made that the 5 million Floridians who were eligible to vote in Florida in the 2000 elections but chose not to are really the ones who tipped the scale. There are many reasons why eligible voters stay home on election day. It could be that they just can't be bothered, that their vote, at least in their state, won't matter anyway. Or maybe they can't make it to a ballot box because of work or transportation or illness or any number of reasons. That's valid, because voting access remains an issue. Or maybe they're just missing that spark, lacking the enthusiasm for either candidate. That, in my books, isn't valid, because someone's going to win that election, and it's your responsibility in a democracy to carry your weight. And part of that weight is casting an informed vote. And sometimes very enthusiastic, very informed Americans abstain from voting in protest to make a point. A protest vote is a vote cast to demonstrate dissatisfaction with the pool of candidates or the current political system at large. Typically, a protest voter might cast their ballot for uncommitted, none of the names shown, or no preference. Other times, they'll cast a ballot for a candidate with a minimal chance of winning, or they'll write in the name of someone who isn't even running. Or they just won't vote at all. Casting a protest vote against the shoo-in nominee in a primary is nothing new. It's often an important and useful tool. It shows that you do care about democracy. Doing that in a general election is dangerous. And in 2024, it could be existentially dangerous, because this year is different. This year, you have a binary choice between democracy and the expressway to autocracy. When the road splits in two, on the right side, you have a candidate who incited an insurrection at the U.S. Capitol to remain in power after having lost the electoral vote, who has vowed to exact revenge on his political enemies, who is accused of having illegally taken and stowed sensitive and classified government documents in a bathroom, who was found liable for fraud and for sexually abusing a woman. On that same right side, you have a candidate who faces 91 felony charges across 4 different criminal trials, one who has pledged to weaponize the Justice Department and local police departments, to launch mass deportations, to ban migrants from certain Muslim countries, to abandon climate initiatives, to roll back protections for the LGBTQ+ community, to make abortion restrictions the law of the entire land, not just in some states. Down that same road on the left side, we see a candidate who has done none of that. He is not a candidate without his flaws. He is not a candidate who is unworthy of your valid criticisms for decisions he's made and policies he's enacted. You can and should be angry with how he's handled certain issues. I certainly am. But refusing your vote is not the answer. A protest vote is not the answer. Voting for the other guy is not the answer. Casting an uncommitted ballot can be important in a primary. It's a canary in the coal mine, a stark warning to the candidate that all is not well, a message I sincerely hope this candidate hears. And I applaud the people who took their democratic obligation seriously. But that is not the way you prove the point in a general election. In a true participatory democracy, especially in a democracy that is currently holding on by a thread, your vote is your voice. It is sacred, very hard won. In 2020, that main pillar of our democracy came this close to losing all of its value. Don't take it for granted. Use it. When you find yourself at the fork in the road on the left might be a bumpy ride. The scenery might be ugly at times. But the road on the right is a dark tunnel headed straight for a dead end.